Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend, where we go behind the scenes and talk to the creators of independent entertainment. I'm Jason Godbey, and with me in the Rabbit Hole studio today, he is a documentary filmmaker and the director of a new documentary called The Creepy Line, Mr. Matthew Taylor. Welcome, Matthew.
Oh, thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for making the schlep to Brooklyn, my friend.
My pleasure.
I want to talk about the film, definitely, because I saw the trailer. And it scared the bejesus out of me. It's a very compelling trailer, but we'll get into it. And this is not a horror movie. This is a documentary. So we'll get into it. But first, I want to talk a little bit about you. So, how did you get into this whole thing? How did you come to filmmaking? Like, what's your origin story?
Well, my background's actually in fine arts. I started fiddling around with filmmaking, probably 1999. And I actually kind of really enjoyed doing documentary. I did some work at the military channel and some television. I like documentaries. I like learning. I like interviewing people. I like doing a variety of different topics and travel. And so brings me to this point and to the Creepy Line, which is kind of a larger project that has to do with some very current issues.
Okay, so let's get into it. So, give me the. I'll be very Hollywood. Give me the log line for Creepy Line. What's your pitch for it?
So The Creepy Line is a film about how big tech, primarily Google and Facebook, are using their services to manipulate their users, and ultimately how this kind of manipulation can push your opinion in one way or the other, including how they can undermine democracy with these kinds of technologies. And that's essentially what The Creepy Line is.
So in the trailer, they talk about how people come up to what they call the creepy line. Mm-hmm. What is the creepy line per se? Is that the sort of the line they shouldn't cross in terms of what they're going to do with our information?
Yeah, well, the line comes from a famous press conference with Eric Schmidt in 2010, where Eric Schmidt famously said the Google policy is to get right up to the creepy line, but not cross it. And kind of our position is, why would you ever want to be near a creepy line? Creepy is a really bad word. In fact, we say it in the film, a creepy mugger is worse than a mugger, because a mugger wants your money. God only knows what a creepy mugger wants. And so if a company of the size of Google says that they like to get up to the creepy line, we have to ask, what does that mean? And from our opinion, they cross the creepy line every day, and they move where the creepy line is pretty much on a daily basis.
So in making this film, was this something, because we were chatting a little bit before broadcast, but did you go into this movie with a point of view, or was this I'm going to educate myself by talking to these people, and I'm going to I want to remain sort of like the omniscient observer, and I want to be impartial? What was your attitude going in?
Well, I love technology. I'm a big technology fan. I've followed the rise of Google and Facebook. I actually think Google did a lot of really great things in the early 2000s to disseminate information, to help, education and all these, bring all these amazing services. And, of course, Facebook in 2004 to bring people together. But we've reached a point now where these companies have matured, and what we've seen is a culmination of behavior that is I would say, somewhat either unethical or problematic. They get caught doing a number of things over the last couple of years, primarily in the EU. They never come out and say, we made a mistake. They're always caught, and that's a big difference. And so this really came down to, this seems to be something that we should all start having a conversation about, because at least in the United States, we haven't really started talking about what does this all mean? What does getting the free email mean? What does it mean for us? What does it mean for our families? They're much further along in the EU on discussing these topics, and so we want to start that conversation here.
Is that kind of the central message in the movie, that it's not like you need to do this or that, but can we talk about it? Is that what you want audiences to come away with ultimately, or are you just trying to frighten the bejesus out of people like the trailer did to me?
Well, we really want to start that conversation. We think it's important. We think it's important that the audience understands the seriousness of what this all means. It's important to know that when you write an email in your Gmail, and if you don't send it, Google has already read it. If you don't send it, that's what I'm saying. These kinds of services have a cost because ultimately, in the days of the Apple and the Microsoft, they sold us iPhones, and they still sell us iPhones. They sell Office, they sell products. But with Google and Facebook, the paradigm has shifted. We are the product. So what I want you to do when you watch the film is to understand that your use of these things comes at a cost. And yes, it will scare the bejesus out of you. And it's not even like I set out to scare the bejesus out of you. When we first started the film, it wasn't called The Creepy Line. It became The Creepy Line because it really was creepy.
So people are going to find this show on YouTube. If they're not watching it they're not watching the initial broadcast, they'll find it on Facebook and they'll find it on YouTube. YouTube is owned by Google, of course, anybody who's in the media space is, you can't afford to make an enemy out of Google. Almost whatever you do. I mean, I'm certainly not saying anything bad about them because, I want to have a show. But I think, it does become this, if you're not talking about it, who is, and how do you talk about it? Like even marketing this picture. How are you going to, you're on this show and there's a small percentage of people, but it's mainly geared toward filmmakers. This is, part of the audience you want to reach because we are media creators and we need, this show does better views on Facebook than it does on YouTube. So I use Facebook a lot, and Facebook marketing, Instagram marketing, it's really cheap and it's very effective. So, you're certainly... You want to get the message out there, but how much are you really going to change people in their terms of their practices? Because now what was a luxury in terms of, this is a cool, convenient thing, is now a necessity. It's like the iPhone or like a smartphone. Before it was invented, nobody needed one. I've lived in New York City for 20-something years. I never saw people lined up around the corner to use a payphone before cell phones were here. So, but now that these services are so embedded, and you're trying to make an impact on the audience, what do you feel like? What's going to happen? What do you feel like the effect will be if people say, "Wait, I don't want people doing this"? Do you think that you'll cause any? Do you think you can really affect change with it? Is what I'm saying. And I know it's a tough question to answer because you have no way of knowing that. But it does go to authorial intent in a way. And I think, with you, I don't know if, because we talked about POV, going into it, you weren't going into it saying, this is just evil and I don't want to, and nobody should use this, because you live in the real world. Yeah. But now that the film is coming out and hopefully people will see it, what is it just will people be more mindful maybe of the way they use it? Because, I don't know. I'll let you answer that question.
Yeah. I mean, look, at the very least, people should be mindful. A lot of the questions I get usually are, what are the alternatives? Well, if you use Google search, there is no alternative at this point in time. There are alternatives for email. There are alternatives for messaging. There are alternatives for your operating system on your cell phone. Apple's not a lot better, but they are better than Android. These are surveillance platforms, and this is a surveillance capitalist model. That's what it is. This is surveillance capitalism. They surveil you, they collect your information, and they sell it to advertisers. But here's the other thing. They also sell it to governments, and they sell it to law enforcement. So these are their clients that they're selling your information to. And so the question is, what can the film do? Well, you just had Facebook report last week that 50 million people's information was hacked, which is probably not even close to the real number of information that was leaked or stolen, password stolen. And so we are really kind of coming out at a moment where everything is converging on these topics, and everyone is becoming aware at the same time. Some people think, was it planned for us to release the movie at this time with all these things happening? I mean, in some ways it's amazing that it's all happening now. But the thing is these things are happening. They've been happening. We're just starting to understand them now. And look, it's like this. People ask for what's the solution. I think that we don't know the ramifications of what it means to change these services that so are integrated into our life. Like you said, the iPhone and things. If you had to take the iPhone away, what would it do to your business? We don't know. So we have to be very cautious about the solutions we propose, which means we're going to have to really sit there and be very careful how we look at it and what we do, and not make any knee-jerk reactions, whether it's regulatory, whether it's, there's a lot of options that you can do. We're all going to have to explore what they are so we don't cause damage to these massive infrastructures that are 100% integrated with our lives.
So for you, did you change the way, like when you found this stuff out? I'll ask you, did you say, did it make you look at your phone differently? Did it make you kind of because, as a filmmaker, social media and YouTube and Vimeo and all these different online services, they were a godsend. They were like a way for us to get a message out. They were a way for us to show people what we can do. I use this stuff for clients all the time. I use the YouTube embed on my website. But did you kind of go, wait, I got to do some? It's like the guy who first learns about recycling. Do you stop buying plastic, or do you only get paper? How did it change anything for you personally?
Well, for me personally, I already was kind of, I was never really a Google fan. I was a fan of the democratization of the technology, just like I was a fan of the democratization of editorial with, say, Final Cut Pro in 1999. This was a big move. These are important platforms for people like us who are making things, for the creator. But the thing is that we took the tools, we used the tools, we signed on to the tools, we opted in, and we never thought about what the consequences might be as these companies grew larger and larger. Me personally, I was already cautious of these technologies simply because I just was. I'm a last tail end of Generation X, so we're skeptical by nature. The millennial generation is less, and so I think that I don't use Facebook a lot. I don't post a lot in that respect, and I don't use Google products anyway. But again, I use these products, and how do you not? I use Google to search for things to make this movie, so it's kind of impossible. It would be nice if there were alternatives, but I have to be honest with you, no one's complaining about the technology. This is not a project because it doesn't work. It works so well that it's actually concerning.
Now, the audience here is predominantly filmmakers, content creators, those types of people. You're making a documentary like this. People could call it controversial. Some people will call it socially relevant. I'm talking to you because I got you sent me I saw the trailer of it, and I said, I'm not kidding. It does make you pause when you think about this sort of thing. And when the sources that you've gotten, because you did get some really good access with this. Before I get into who did you get for this film? Talk about some of the people that you talked to, just to give people an idea where the information is coming from. I think that's relevant.
Absolutely. So, we got people from, we see this as a nonpartisan issue, but it requires people in power and both sides of the aisle to interact. So we had Democrats and Republicans in the film. We felt that was very important. We had Luther Lowe from Yelp, and we have Dr. Robert Epstein, who is he's a psychologist, one of the world's predominant he tracked Google for 6 months during the U.S. presidential election in 2016 without them knowing. He tracked them in India. He's done more research on Google than probably anybody. If you really want to be terrified, you just need to hear him talk for about 10 minutes because he knows everything. We had some Republicans. We had actually Jordan Peterson, who's very controversial, but he got bumped off of Google Google and they shut his calendars down and things like that. Dr. Robert Epstein, who's a Hillary supporter and a Democrat, he also got booted by Google and had his information shut down just for writing an article. So this is a thing that affects all people. It doesn't matter who you are, what you are. We don't know what their motivations are, if they want to demonetize you, if they want to censor you, if they want to shut you out. Nobody on either side of the aisle should have this kind of power, and that's kind of our stance in the film, is that it doesn't matter who you are, how you vote. No private company should be able to censor anyone like that.
If you were before you made this movie, or if you're like, say, an up-and-coming filmmaker and you have a passion for docs, like we had John Adler in this chair, who's a great documentarian, has done some really powerful doc work. I mean, he went over to Baghdad and did Baghdad ER and films like that, socially relevant, impactful, and not easy to make. I've done a lot of things in film where, my feet and my back hurt at the end of the day, but nobody's firing bullets at me. You know what I mean? And, the way you're talking, I'm hoping nobody fires bullets at you.
We'll see.
But if you were a young doc maker, or if you wanted to get into this, what advice would you give someone who's trying to make a socially relevant doc like that? How would you tell them to approach it?
Look, I think the great thing about documentaries, and why they're very different from feature films, is that you can start a documentary simply with a camera. It's all about the content. Whereas a feature film, you need money to build sets and hire actors and all these kinds of things. With a documentary, content is king. So if you have somebody and you have an iPhone and they have something to say that is important, that iPhone and that quality should not take away from the content that comes out of their mouths. And so you can start a documentary simply by finding the people and searching for the content and working with the tools that are available to you. It's one reason I like documentaries, because if I don't have a lot of resources, I can still get that content. I can still really kind of chase it down. You'll be surprised. You don't need to have a studio. You don't need to have all these resources you need for a feature film to do a documentary. What you need is a good story and good content. And look, you can go up to the Hill and grab a congressman and put an iPhone in his face, and that piece of content can be the content that drives your film forward. And it's that easy. So it's really about going out there and getting the content. That would be my biggest suggestion.
Very cool. So for the future, I know that the plan for this is you're going to do the festival circuit. Hopefully, you'll get distribution for it. What about upcoming projects for you? Is there a follow-up to this, or are you kind of like, maybe you're going to do a doc on a movie star or something? That's not so rife with controversy. What's next for you?
Well, we have a number of projects we're considering. Some are biographies, some are historical, and we like to do a number of things. So right now, they're all top secret at this point in time until we finish rolling out the creepy line.
Okay, well, I think for this, I definitely want to see the movie. And then I don't know how I'm going to sleep at night after I see the movie, but hopefully it will. The impact that you'll drive home is just people being more careful, maybe, and being, just because obviously you're not going to be able to stand in front of the steamroller, but maybe you don't have to. Maybe you can use it better. Maybe you can not put certain things out there, not put so much of your personal information, or maybe there will be a compromise that's reached, between tech and I think part of the problem is that the laws in this country, especially, have not caught up to where this technology is at, and maybe that's the conversation that needs to be had more than most. Is that yes, we all use this stuff, yes, we all enjoy it, but to what end, and who's ultimately going to be the arbiter of right and wrong, kind of thing. And for now it's you. For now it's like, you can decide what you use for it. But anyway, I think it's a tremendous topic. It's certainly rife. There's a lot there, and I'm sure it's going to be a compelling documentary. But anyway, if people want to find out more about this film or more about you, where can they go?
You can go to www.thecreepyline.com, and there will be more information there. It's a great website. When you go there, the first thing that comes up is it tells you your location, and it tells you, a little bit of information that it just pulls live, just to give you an example of how powerful these tools can be. And that's just visiting the website.
Very cool, very cool. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up here, but thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being on the show. And we do want to highlight independent film and highlight both narrative and docs here, because I think they're both equally important. And I'm interested to see what happens with it.
Me too.
Anyway, thank you for coming, and thank you for joining us. As always, thank you for taking this trip down the rabbit hole. For more episodes of this show, you can always find them on our website, btrp.nyc. You can also find us on all the major podcast channels if you prefer to listen rather than watch. You can find us on Anchor, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, etc., as well as any other major networks. And I would say, check this out, see how you feel about it, and keep in contact with these guys and leave them some feedback. I think it would be great, because use the web for good. Anyway, to wrap up, I'm Jason Godbey for Behind the Robert Productions. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.